Learning never stops.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to our principal, Sir Kenneth, to our OIC Department Head, Ma'am Marivic De Vera, as well as sa mga master teachers ng aming Science Department, Sir Nick, Ma'am Mean, and Ma'am Mean, and gayon din sa mga grade 9 science teachers na busy today sa pagdidistribute at pag-retrieve ng ating answer sheet for summative test. Ma'am Nancy, Ma'am Lovely, and Ma'am Ana. Kasali din of course si Ma'am Mean. Okay, so good afternoon sa mga grade 9 students na nakatutok today. So we have the first good afternoon greeting from Shaira, followed by Elisa, Shasi, Sophia, Nicole, Dayan, Wayne, Lian, Jabe, Samantha, and Umar. So hopefully ay marami na naman kayong matutunan sa ating class today. And of course, as part of our routine, kukumustahin ko muna kayo. How are you feeling today? So are you feeling happy, excited, tired, Kasi baka marami kayong ginawa nung weekend. Or you are feeling motivated kasi may panibago na namang tayong lesson for this week. Or even feeling excited and feeling accomplished kasi successfully nakapag-submit na ng answer sheet ng summative test. Okay? So just comment the emoticon of your choice. Ayan, bahabol ng good afternoon greetings galing kay Jonaline, Queen, and Jacine. So very good ang mga ODL students ko from Acacia, Agoho, and Anahaw. So hopefully may maka-tune in din from our MDL students, lalo na yung galing sa Almasiga, Amugis, and Bignay. So yan, sanay na ang ating mga grade 9 students. Samantha is feeling happy. The same with Sophia. So, hi Gwyneth from Kaimito. Yan, meron na tayong MDL student. Lian is feeling happy, as well as Nicole. Si Nicole ay feeling accomplished din. The same with Shasi, Dayan, and Gwyneth. So, Elisa is feeling tired. So, later, baka ma-motivate ka na sa ating bagong topic. Then, Gwyneth is also feeling happy and accomplished. Okay? So, just keep on commenting your emojis. Para makita namin kung how are you feeling for today. Okay? So, as part of our discussion last week about projectile motion, so if you remember, we say projectile motion is any object that is thrown into the air where the only force acting on it is the force of gravity. And we also said that the projectile motion has two components, the horizontal and vertical component. So horizontal denoted by letter X and vertical denoted by letter Y. And based on the concepts that we studied last week, along the horizontal component, there is no acceleration, therefore the velocity is said to be constant. So if we are going to describe the motion of the object along the horizontal component, then we can conclude that the object, a projectile, along considering its horizontal component, has a uniform motion or simply a constant velocity because acceleration is zero. As simple as that. Okay? And then along the vertical component, the object or the projectile accelerates because of the force of gravity with a constant value of 9.8 meters per second squared. Negative, it is negative, the negative sign denotes the downward direction. So, ibig sabihin, habang bumabagsak ang object pababa, ang projectile pababa, the velocity, the acceleration is constant, which is 9.8, pero dahil pababa, it is negative. Or in short, the velocity increases while moving downward with a constant value of acceleration. So that's why when we describe the velocity along the vertical component, it is said to be uniformly accelerated motion. Okay? So check nga natin kung naintindihan ng ating mga students etong concepts na tinuro last week. So balikan natin itong tanong na to, So if you are familiar with this question, a ball is launched upward at an angle. So we have here the diagram, point A up to point I. But what we will consider here is the location of the ball from point A to point D. So, tingnan nyo dyan sa screen nyo, nasa ng point A, point B, point C, and point D. So, hanggang dun lang tayo. So, considering the location, point A to point D, how are we going to describe the horizontal velocity? How are we going to describe the vertical velocity? Same set of choices. Is it A, increases the entire time? B, decreases the entire time? C, first increases, then decreases? D, first decreases, then increases? Or E, never changes? So, challenge ko na agad kayo, no? Bago tayo mag-proceed sa ating bagong lesson. So, type number 5, then the letter of your answer. Type number 6, then the letter of your answer. Yan. So, good afternoon kay Ma'am Ana. She is also watching today. Yan. So, meron ding pagbati galing kay Dexter. The same also from Kathleen. So, si Umar is feeling happy. Krisha is feeling happy. So, habang iniintay ko ang inyong mga answers, yan, nag-iisip pa sila. Consider point A up to point D. So, remember ha, horizontal velocity is constant. So, there is no acceleration along the horizontal component of a projectile motion. And then, along the vertical, velocity changes because of the influence of acceleration due to gravity. So, which is 9.8 meters per second squared. Yan. So, sabi ni Ma'am Ana, please comment naman, section, if present ang mga student ko from Caimito, Banaba, Bakawan, Apitong, Santol, and Balete. So, si Ma'am Sally ay bumabati rin ng hello sa kanyang grade 9 Bayabas. Okay? Naku, mukhang nagre-recall pa ang mga grade 9 natin, no? So, again, considering location A up to location D, how will you describe the velocity along the horizontal and along the vertical? Given the same set of choices, is it A, B, C, D, or E? Answer reveal na ba tayo? So, point A, that is the starting position of the object. Kung titingnan niyo yung figure, the projectile is launched at an angle. Okay, kasi we have two types of projectile, launch horizontally and launch at an angle. So, here in this example, from point A, that is the original location of the object is launched or the projectile is launched at an angle. Yan. May sagot na si Elisa. She answered E and C. Gwyneth answered E and B. Lian answered E for number 5. So, check nga natin. Answer reveal tayo habang nag-iisip ang ibang mga classmates. So, Shasi answered E and A. So, for number 5, iisa ang mga sagot nila lahat, no? They all answered letter E. So, check natin. Correct answer is letter E. So, very good, students. The velocity along the horizontal is always constant. So, it never changes. Whether it is launched horizontally or launched at an angle. Pero nag-iba-iba ang inyong mga sagot sa number 6, the vertical velocity. Point A to point D. So, mula dun sa original position, papunta sa point D. Bago pa siya mag-peak, which is point E. So, check natin. Answer reveal tayo for number 6. Correct answer is letter B. Decreases the entire time. So, yan. May mga tumama naman sa sagot ng ating mga students. So, ma'am, bakit po letter B? From the original position, hinagis pataas ang ball. The ball is launched upward. So, ibig sabihin, pagdating sa pinakatuktok, which is point E, hihinto si object. So, try nyo maghagis ngayon, just sa location nyo ngayon, nyo, maghagis kayo ng object pataas. Wag lang yung cellphone ang ihagis nyo. So, throw an object upward, then at the highest point, at the peak, the object will stop. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, papahinto ang object. So, that's why for number 6, the vertical velocity is described as the vertical velocity decreases the entire time until it reaches 0 vertical velocity at point E, which is the highest point or highest location of the trajectory. Okay? So, very good ang ating mga students. So, dahil dyan, for this week, itutuloy natin ang ating discussion for Q4 Projectile Motion Week 2. So this time you are going to investigate the relationship between the angle of release and the height and range of the projectile. So these are the objectives of today's lesson. So you need to distinguish between height and range of a projectile and explain the relationship between the angle of release and the height and range of a projectile. So to understand more about our most essential learning competency and to learn about the given objectives, let's watch this video.
Mangga, anong mga concept ng science meron sa mga sports katulad ng basketball? Hi, Mangga!
What's up, Mangga?
Pass, dribble, and shoot. Whether you are watching college teams on TV or playing in the backyard, basketball is fun because of science. When someone throws a basketball toward the hoop, the ball goes through projectile motion because it moves along a parabolic trajectory in horizontal direction while rising in height at the same time under the influence of gravity only. Most ball games require the ball to be thrown, hit, or kicked to reach a certain distance or height. Did you know that there is some science behind these throws, hits, or kicks? And sometimes it is called the angle of release. The angle of release can affect just how high or how far a throw, a hit, or a kick can carry a ball. How does the angle of release influence the trajectory of a projectile? In this lesson, you should be able to distinguish between height and range of a projectile and explain the relationship between the angle of release and the height and range of a projectile. It's time to take a look at the science concepts behind ball games. Strengthen your knowledge of physics. Only here at Science Matters, where learning never stops. Projectile motion is the motion of an object thrown into the air, like an object dropped from a height, thrown vertically upwards, or thrown at an angle. The path followed by a projectile is known as a trajectory. If gravity were not present, a projectile would travel in a constant straight line. However, the presence of gravity forces projectiles to travel in a parabolic trajectory. Thus, gravity accelerates objects downwards. Once a projectile is released, whether horizontally or at an angle, the horizontal and vertical components of a projectile's displacement vary with time. The vertical distance of the projectile above the ground is called height, which is dependent only upon the acceleration of gravity, while the horizontal distance traveled by the projectile between the launch and the landing points is called range, which is only influenced by the speed at which it moves horizontally and the amount of time that it has been moving horizontally. One of the key components of projectile motion and the trajectory it follows is the initial launch angle, or the angle of release. This is the angle at which the projectile leaves the horizontal plane, which is usually the ground. The angle at which the object is launched dictates the height and range the object will experience while in projectile motion. With the same initial velocity but different angles of release, a projectile will reach different heights and ranges. An object launched into projectile motion will have an initial angle of release anywhere from 0 to 90 degrees. If the effect of air resistance is negligible, projectiles will have parabolic trajectories. As the projectile moves, it will reach different altitudes or heights above the ground. The greater the angle of release, the closer the object comes to maximum height. Maximum height of a projectile is the highest vertical position along its trajectory. This occurs when the vertical component of velocity equals 0. A projectile reaches its maximum height when the angle of release is 90 degrees. Therefore, the height covered by a projectile increases as the angle of release approaches 90 degrees. The angle of release also determines the range that an object will experience after being launched. The range of a projectile is the distance traveled by the projectile during its time of flight. The remarkable thing to note is that the same range is obtained from two different angles of release. These are angles that add up to 90 degrees, also called complementary angles in mathematics. An object thrown into the air at an angle of 15 degrees, for example, will have the same range as if it were thrown at the same speed at an angle of 75 degrees. The same is true for angles 30 degrees and 60 degrees. The range of a projectile for a given initial velocity is maximum when it is projected at an angle of 45 degrees with the horizontal. Thus, we say that a projectile attains its maximum range described as the maximum horizontal distance traveled by the projectile from its original position during its entire motion.
Science matters, where learning never stops.
The angle of release is an important factor affecting the flight path of a projectile. Now that we understand how the launch angle plays a major role in many other components of the trajectory of an object in projectile motion, we can apply that knowledge to making an object land where we want it. We can play better in various ball games. We can kick, hit, or throw a ball at a specific angle to attain the desired height or range. Looking at the physics of a game is fun, but the best way to get better at anything is to get out there and see how it works in real life. Subscribe now to our YouTube channel, Dasmanord Science, so you won't miss any video lesson. I'm Ma'am Janice saying, happy learning, everyone! Yan. So, I hope na may nadagdag na naman na bagong learnings, no? Doon sa video lesson na napanood ninyo. Okay? So, before we have the summary of the important concepts, yan, meron pa rin tayong mga greetings, no? From our students na nasa live chat. So, humahabol pa rin sila ng pagbati ng good afternoon. So, that's okay. So, as part of our, for the summary of the important concepts, so ito lang naman ang ating kailangang tandaan, no? So if we will go back with our most essential learning competency and objectives, so you should be able to distinguish between height and range of a projectile. and know the relationship between between the so-called angle of release and the height and range of a projectile. So if you remember, no, in the given video, the ball is released at different angles. Of course, from the time the projectile is launched or released, so we have the so-called angle of release. Mapi-play ko ba to? Yan. So, yan. The red ball is released at 15 degrees. So, iba-iba ang tawag dyan eh. We can call that as angle of release, angle of projection, and other terms, no? But they denote the same. So, the green ball is released at 30 degrees angle, 30 degree angle. The blue ball is released at 45 degree angle. Orange is at 60 degree angle. Then, may isa pang blue, no, darker than 45 degrees, so which is 75 degree angle. So from the given video, we can derive, no, the concepts, the important concepts, no, discussed in the video lesson. So of course, when we say height, that describes the distance of the projectile with reference to the ground. So mula sa ground, so, how high the projectile is, the object is, then that is what we call height. And then from the original position, from the angle of launch, how high, from the original position, how long is the distance covered or traveled by the projectile. That is now what we call range. So, pagpa-vertical, we call that as height. Distance along the vertical, that is called height. Distance along the horizontal, that is what we call range. So, madali lang naman tandaan. Now, how are those terms related to the so-called angle of release? So, ito lang naman po ang kailangan yung tandaan. So, of course, the angle of release ranges from 0 degree to 90 degrees. So, as height, height increases as the angle of projection or angle of release approaches 90 degrees. So, kung titingnan nyo dito sa ating image, habang lumalapit siya sa 90 degrees, the height or the vertical distance covered by the projectile increases. So, meaning it is maximum at 90 degrees. And then, in terms of the range, the greatest range occurs when the angle of release or angle of projection is 45 degrees, which is naman kitang-kita dito sa ating image. Okay? So, as simple as that. So, hopefully ay natandaan yan ng ating mga students, no? At magamit ninyo, no, sa pagsasagot at makatulong sa inyo sa pagsasagot sa inyong mga learning tasks. So, anyway, sa mga students na ODL, from Acacia, Agoho, and Anahaw, meron na tayong course sa LMS. So, pakihintay na lang na may enroll ko kayo para masagutan nyo na ang mga learning task ng week 1 and week 2. So, anyway, wala namang pasok ng 2 weeks because of election, kaya makakahabol kayo sa pagsasagot ng ating mga learning task. Okay, so bumabati pa rin ng good afternoon ang ating student, si Danica from Almasiga. We have Prince from Acacia, Clarence from Bayabas, Reyna from Acacia. Okay lang po ang late. So, makakahabol pa rin sa ating discussion. Okay? So, if you have questions, you can type in sa ating live chat para ma-address natin. So, to check your understanding, check nga natin dito sa mga tanong na inihanda ko para sa inyo. So, for question number 1, a football is kicked into the air at an angle of 45 degrees with the horizontal. At the very top of the ball's path, its velocity is blank. Is it A, entirely vertical, B, entirely horizontal, C, both vertical and horizontal, or D, not enough information given to know? Okay? So, yan. How will you describe the velocity at the very top? Sa pinakatuktok, magpi-play kaya to? Pag pinindot ko, baka kasi mag-answer reveal tayo eh. So, type number 1, then the letter of your answer. Yan. So, sa palagay nyo, if the football is kicked at an angle of 45 degrees along the horizontal, how will you describe the velocity at the very top of the ball's trajectory? Is it A, B, C, or D? So, type number 1, then the letter of your answer. So, nag-iisip ang ating mga students. Remember ha, Velocity along the horizontal is said to be constant. Velocity along the vertical changes because of the influence of acceleration due to gravity. So, kung yan ay launch at an angle, pataas, syempre pabagal yan kasi hihinto sa tuktok. Pagdating naman sa tuktok, babagsak, pabilis yan kasi hihilain ng acceleration due to gravity. Yan, may sagot na ang ating mga students. So, Gwyneth, Reyna, Lian, Kathleen, all answered letter B. So, mukhang hindi naman sila nahirapan. Answer reveal tayo. Queen also answered letter B. Tignan nga natin. Yan. Kung titignan nyo yung animation, consider nyo yung arrow na green at arrow na red. So, si red, that represents the horizontal velocity. Then, yung green, that is the vertical velocity. So, correct answer for number 1 is letter B, entirely horizontal. So, very good ang mga students. Tama ang kanilang sagot. So, ma'am, bakit entirely horizontal? Simply because, kung titignan nyo yung ating animation, yun o, tingnan nyo si green. Nawawala si green. Ibig sabihin, pabagal. Then, sa tuktok, nawala na ng tuluyan, meaning the velocity is 0. So, ibig sabihin, kahit anong angle mo yan i-release yung projectile, at the very top, the velocity along the vertical becomes 0. Ang natitira lang ay si horizontal. Always remember that. Okay? Number 2. Same question, same given, pero magkaiba naman ng tanong, no, na hinahanap. A football is kicked into the air at an angle of 45 degrees with the horizontal. At the very top of the ball's path, its acceleration is blank. Neglect the effects of air resistance. Same choices, A, entirely vertical, B, entirely horizontal, C, both vertical and horizontal, D, not enough information given to know. So this time, ang tinatanong naman ay acceleration at the very top of the ball's trajectory. So comment down number 2, then the letter of your answer. Ipi-play ko ulit yung animation ha. Tingnan nyo yung arrow. Yan. At the very top, how will you describe the acceleration of the ball? Is it A, B, C, or D? So nagsagot din kanina si Naomi, Shaira, Danica, and a lot more. So for number 2, yan, may sagot na si Gwyneth. She answered letter A. The same with Reyna, Danica, Charilyn, Krisha, Kathleen. So they all answered letter A. Ganon din si Justin, Shasi, Samantha, Jave. So answer reveal tayo for number 2. At the very top, the acceleration of the ball is... Correct answer is letter A, entirely vertical. So, bakit entirely vertical? Kasi, ang natitira na lang kasi meron tayong influence ng acceleration due to gravity. So, actually, kahit anong angle din yan acceleration is always constant, which is 9.8 meters per second squared. So, very good ang ating mga students. So, next, number 3. Yan. An object is shot from the ground at 25 meters per second at 25 degrees and 65 degrees. Which one rises to a higher height? Assume no air resistance. Is it A, 25 degrees, B, 65 degrees, or C, same for both angles? Again, ang hinahanap natin ay which angle rises to a higher height? Greater vertical distance. Is it A, B, or C? So, type number 3, then the letter of your answer. So, alin kaya dyan ang may mas mataas na height covered or vertical distance covered? The object shot at 25 degrees or the object shot at 65 degrees, or they will just have the same height covered for both angles. So, type number 3, then the letter of your answer. So, sa palagay nyo. So, remember, height is the vertical distance covered by the projectile with reference to the ground. So, ano kaya dyan ang correct answer? So, type number 3, then the letter of your answer. So, nag-iisip yung ating mga students. So, in between 0 to 90 degrees lang naman ang angle of release Kung ang object ay nirelease at 25-degree angle and 65-degree angle, which do you think will have a higher height? Is it A, B, or C? 3 choices lang tayo. So, Reyna, Lian answered letter C. Jasin answered B. Samantha, Maika, Maria Joanna answered C. Krisha answered A. So yan, rumble yung kanilang answers. So answer reveal tayo for number 3. Correct answer is letter B, 65 degrees. Remember, from the video, from the summary, as the angle of release approaches 90 degrees, height increases. Okay? Actually, pinakamataas nga yung height covered sa 90 degrees eh. Kasi ihagis mo yung object pataas, yun na ang kanyang pinakamataas na height covered. So, ibig sabihin, the greater the angle of release, the greater the height covered by the projectile. So, syempre, mas malaki si 65 degrees, kaya mas haba or mas mataas ang vertical distance covered niya or height covered as compared to 25 degree. Hindi pwedeng same for both angles. Okay? So that's why the correct answer is letter B. So paki-comment nga ang inyong score. Did you get 3/3, 2/3, or 1/3 para malaman natin kung anong part ng lesson natin kayo nahirapan. So habang nagko-comment kayo sa ating mga ODL students, ito ang ating task for week 2. So, isa lang ang ibibigay ko sa inyong task, performance task, which is learning task 2.3, assessment projectile motion. And for our MDL students, wala tayong discussion sa ating last sa nakuha nyong learner's activity sheet. So, ibig sabihin, panoorin nyo lang ang discussion dito sa ating Lodi para masagot nyo ang mga learning task na nandito sa ating last. So, we have learning task 1, is it true or false? Learning task 2, just identify the letter of the answer. Choose the number that correctly describes the motion of the ball. And then learning task 3, multiple choice, A, B, C, D, numbers 1 to 10. Okay? So, yan. Kung meron pong tanong, paki-comment. Yan, meron tayong student na naka 3/3. Meron namang 2/3. Merong 1/3. So, ibig sabihin, medyo nahirapan kayo dito sa ating discussion. So, next week, bago ulit tayo after 2 weeks, magdi-discuss tayo ng week 3. So, bago tayo mag-proceed sa week 3 discussion, magbibigay ulit ako ng short recall regarding our discussion today para mas maintindihan nyo pa yung ating topic. Okay? So, any more questions, student? Kung hindi naman ma-type dito sa ating live chat, isend na lang via PM to your science teachers. Okay? So, wala naman sila ng tanong. Dahil dyan, I am Ma'am Janice Reyes. So, keep on watching and tuning in only here in Science Matters, where learning never stops. Bye-bye!